Return to the land, legal fundraiser. I know what you're thinking. Anytime you see a conservative organization start a legal fund, it must mean that they're being lawfared. Somebody decided to sue them, the ADL or the SPLC or what have you, and the organization now needs to raise $5,000 or $25,000 or maybe $137,000 to pay the lawyers and the exorbitant legal fees they now have to pay in order to defend themselves in court. We at Return to the Land are taking a different approach. Of course, we aren't under the delusion that we're never going to be lawfare. We fully expect that once we get big enough, we're going to get some kind of lawsuit to deal with eventually. We want to be prepared for that. So we have a two-pronged strategy to deal with the possibility of getting lawfared. The first prong is what we're doing right now, extensive legal research and making sure all of our documents and all of the choices we've made in regards to which business entities we decide to register for various aspects of the organization and various aspects of the group land buys and everything from that to our tax strategy. We want to make sure we're in compliance everywhere because there's a lot of laws that people just don't know about. There's all kinds of unimaginable things that once you start doing a big project like this, you can easily run afoul of securities laws, you can run afoul of EPA regulations at a big property based on the number of gallons of used motor oil that people are storing on all the lots. So there's a whole bunch of laws you can run afoul. Basically, you want to get to the point where you're as bulletproof as possible, so if they do try to sue you, they're actually going to have to work for it, right? And so our legal fundraiser, we raised some like over $4,000. Actually, we raised over $5,000 at this point. A lot of it you don't see on the GoFundMe because some of it was a private donation. But we raised over $5,000 to do a whole bunch of initial work on our operating agreement based on feedback that was given by a lawyer who's in our PMA free of charge. And then the rest of the money will be spent on paying a specialist, a real estate attorney, to look at what we're doing and analyze our contract and figure out some ways to improve it. But we're not going to stop there. I've identified several other areas that we need to do research in. So we need to hire a securities attorney. We need to hire somebody who specializes in contract law, somebody who specializes in discrimination law, and there might be one or two others. Basically, each of those attempts is probably going to cost, depending on who we find and how much they're willing to charge. Some people are willing to work for free. People who are lawyers for us. The only thing is a lot of times those are not lawyers who are specialists in their field. We're very happy any assistance we get from attorneys who've been practicing, whether it's 2 years or 20 years. So we're taking all the help we can get, and we're also looking to pay big bucks to specialists. And that's the first prong is making sure you're bulletproof in all regards. And the second prong is legal funds, right? So that's when you get sued, you have a bunch of money that you can just dip into and pay your lawyer right away. You don't have to do this long fundraiser online and worry about what's going to happen if you can't afford a lawyer by the time the court date comes and you just default and all of a sudden you have to liquidate all the assets and do all this other stuff, and it's just pretty bad. I'm sure you know in like personal defense cases, a lot of times people plead guilty in self-defense cases in blue states. Even like clear-cut, obvious self-defense cases, the prosecutor decides to prosecute anyways, and they just they get you to plead guilty and sign a plea deal because basically it's going to cost you 10 times as much to actually go to court. Well, the lawyer is going to say, all right, I'll charge you $5,000 if we do a plea deal. You plead guilty, you go to jail for 2 years, and that's it. I'll charge you $25,000 to take this to court, and you have the option, the possibility of spending 20 years in prison. And a lot of times people with no money, they literally have no choice. Even if they were obviously innocent, the fact that the prosecutor has even decided to take up the case means they have to come up with 25 grand or 50 grand or whatever, or spend 2 years in jail. And so that's why you should have self-defense insurance. Anyways, that's just for personal cases. In our situation, we're talking more about a business entity is being sued, but individuals can be sued also, and that's why the entity matters. A lot of people in sort of the right-wing movement think that it's better to just not be incorporated, to not register anything. There are some organizations that go that route, have no documents, just totally informal, and they think that protects them. The problem is the law doesn't work the way that you think it does, and that actually doesn't protect you. In fact, it makes it even worse for all the leaders of the organization and anyone who has acted in any leadership capacity, because that makes you and your personal assets touchable. It makes you personally liable for everything the organization does. With certain corporate entities, such as an LLC, but that's not the only one, it's called a limited liability company, and there's something that's called a corporate veil, which means that legal action tends to be directed towards the company, and it can't touch you except under very limited circumstances. So say if Return to the Land continued being an unregistered, unincorporated association, obviously we have LLCs for our group land buy, our private neighborhoods, for our intentional communities, but RTTL itself is, as of the date of making this video, currently not a registered entity. We are going to change that. And some people will say, why would you do that? That puts a target on your back. It actually takes the target off our backs, because all of a sudden a whole bunch of liability is shifted to the entity that we incorporate, that we register, and not on us personally, unless there are some ways that the corporate veil can be pierced, but it's very difficult. And once your organization gets big enough, you can afford something called officer's insurance, which shields those individuals in those positions from such lawsuits, from the liability that would be incurred if they do manage to pierce the corporate veil, which is very, very rare. So definitely organizations, all kinds of organizations out there, getting incorporated is going to provide you with this legal shield. All of a sudden your organization has to fight it, and your organization's assets have to fight it, not you personally. And I've also heard some people say, in regards to another organization in our space that was recently issued a default judgment because they didn't show up to court, they said, well, that organization doesn't have any assets, so it doesn't matter. Ha, what a joke that they sued them for some deranged homeless man in Boston sued them for a bunch of money because he got pushed off a sidewalk. That's such a big joke. That organization doesn't have any assets. Well, guess what? The leaders have assets. Are you telling me none of the leaders of that organization have cars, houses, a family, a savings account, an IRA, whatever? Are they all broke incels? Maybe some of them have assets. All of those assets can be taken because there was no legal shield. There was nothing to absorb that liability. So that, among many other reasons, is why you should really consider the legal status of your organization. So our legal fundraiser, we hope to raise money. At first, we'll kind of be going through phases where we raise money for each phase of legal research. And then after that, it's going to be raising money to put in our legal fund. But actually, at that point, the donations might stop. Like, we won't need to raise. Yeah, we'll continue raising money for other things like our family fund, which is great. But we might not necessarily be taking donations for the legal fund after a while, because we do intend to, once we have enough group land buys going, the yearly dues from those and from other like higher tiers of membership in the association, part of that is going to go into the legal fund and be held as various forms of liquid assets. So we'll switch from being the legal fund being donation based and only funding legal research to being dues based, just normal revenue of the organization, and basically going into a big fund that's going to sit there that we can use if somebody decides to sue us. So that's the plan, and hopefully after absorbing all this information, you understand what we're doing and how important it is to help us out. The money that's going into our current legal fundraiser is connected to a business entity that we control. It's not going into somebody's personal bank account. So everything that we spend is tracked and accounted for. And hopefully hiring lawyer after lawyer, hopefully switching over time to a model where our different communities are sustainably supporting the legal fund that will then be ready to immediately dish out 25 grand or 50 grand if one of them ends up getting sued. Lawsuits can be expensive. And hopefully that will protect us in the long run a lot more than other organizations that have been lawfared out of existence because they just didn't plan, they didn't do research. They thought their lack of organization or incorporation would protect them when really it harmed them, and it made their leaders personally liable for everything that happened. We're trying to avoid that mess with our two-pronged strategy, lots of legal research making us close to bulletproof, and then having a fund that will help us to immediately pay all legal costs should something happen. We want to make the ADL work, and the SPLC and all those other organizations, although I hear they have a lot less money now that their USAID funding got cut. Just a rumor. One more thing about the ADL. We used to joke back in the day when we were first starting out, we used to always joke that, oh, when we finally make it to the ADL's website, then we'll know we've made it big. Well, guess what? We found out that we actually made it to the ADL's website. We didn't realize this. Somebody pointed out to us. They happened to be surfing on there. I don't know why you would ever go to that website casually, but they found us, and we were listed at Return to the Land, was listed on on the ADL's website in kind of like a roundabout way, because we were associated with some event where there was like I guess there was an active club that they knew to be associated with us somehow. Anyways, it was kind of right about, but yeah, the Return to the Land is now on the ADL's website, and we haven't made it big yet. So that just shows how desperate the ADL is now, that they're taking a tiny little fledgling organization like us and making a big deal out of us. Whereas we used to consider, oh, if we actually make it to the ADL, then we've made it big. So now that's a big win for us, and it's a big old L for the ADL. Which way is that going to be a correct L when you're watching this video? It's a big L for the ADL that they're so desperate that they actually had to list us on their website, and it's a big W for us because that means we're going places. So hopefully you all enjoyed this video, and please donate to the Return to the Land Legal Fund. Help us keep that legal research going, help us keep making sure we're dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, and what have you. And yeah, if you know any lawyers who are on our side and want to help us do research, please let us know.